Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Health Staff Supports webinar today. We are so glad that you were able to join us, and we really look forward to talking with you about health issues. Before we get going, as people are logging in here, just want to share a few tips to make this webinar a positive experience. Please be sure to keep your phone or computer muted to reduce background noise. We are recording this webinar today, and we will be posting it on the dcyf webpage when it's available. We invite you to please use the question box to type in your questions throughout the webinar, and we will pause and respond to questions as we are able. Also, just want to remind folks that we will not be able to answer any directly related COVID-19 questions on this webinar today. All COVID-19 questions can be sent to the dcyf inbox. This inbox is monitored daily, and responses are added to the dcyf coronavirus webpage. So I want to take a minute to introduce ourselves and just acknowledge where we are in the state of Washington, because we are all presenting from different areas of the state. And my name is Kelly DeBoer. I'm an Innovation and Capacity Specialist with ECAP, and I sit in Port Angeles. I use she, her pronouns, and I want to acknowledge that I am currently on the traditional lands of the Klallam people. This includes the Lower Elwha Klallam, the Jamestown Sklallam, and the Port Gamble Sklallam tribes. And this area encompasses the land along the Straits of Juan de Fuca, the San Juan Islands, and down to the southern tip of the Hood Canal.
Hi. Hello, my name is Exalora Brownell, and I'm the Innovation and Capacity Manager with the ECAP team as well. I'm coming to you from Olympia, Washington, which is the indigenous lands of the Squaxin Island peoples, and they have stewarded since time immemorial. The Squaxin Island tribe came to be out of the Medicine Creek Treaty that brought together 7 bands of native people together as one tribe.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Helseth. I'm Health Systems Analyst with the Family Supports team within dcyf, and I am also coming to you from Olympia, from the Boston Harbor area.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Winslow. I am sitting in Seattle, Washington, South King County. I physically sit on the land of the Duwamish people. I also am right on the border of Muckleshoot tribe and a little bit further south, the Puyallup tribe.
Hi, this is Kathy Garland, and I'm the administrator for the Head Start Collaboration Office within the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and I'm also in Olympia, Washington.
Hi, thanks for letting me join you today. I'm Rebecca Timon. I'm the Regional Health Specialist from the Office of Head Start Region 10 Training and Technical Assistance Team.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. So today, we plan to cover a few topics with you, and mostly we really want to hear from you. We want to hear, your questions and wonders during this time. We're going to take a little bit of time at the beginning here to talk about wellness. We'll look at some information on immunizations, review some Head Start updates, and then we really want to open it up to you all for questions and thoughts and ideas that you all would like to share. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Hi everyone, I'm so honored to be in this space with you and sharing this time. I'm Jen Winslow. I am the Trauma-Informed Care Program Manager for DCYF, supporting the early learning sector of DCYF. And I'm here just to share some practical tips for working and engaging with families, but also for ourselves, because this is a difficult time for many, and we serve others when we're best caring for ourselves first. So Kelly, if you could pull up my checklist. The first practical tip I wanted to share with everyone is a series of breath work. And so before we get started, I really highly encourage the participants to do this activity yourself, because it's kind of, you know, the more you do it yourself, the more it ingrains, and it's easier to coach other people through it too. The first thing to think about is think of a place in your body that you tend to hold tension or stress. Like, for example, me, I tend to just crouch and everything is just all on my shoulders, and without thinking about it, by the end of the day, I physically feel that pain. And we tend to carry tension, stress, anxiety all differently. Some people feel it in the pit of their stomach. Sometimes people feel it in their hips, their back, their cranium, that comes in place of like migraine. So start to think of something in your body that where you tend to harbor stress and anxiety. And then the second practice is, on a scale of 1 to 10, gauge your level where you are today. What's on top for you? So 1 would be like, oh, I'm okay. I feel fine. I can breathe easily. I feel as easy as a breeze, is what I kind of describe 1 as, and 10 being that I'm completely dysregulated. I cannot hear anything. I can't process any information coming in. I feel highly, I feel highly stressed. I'm sweating or panting, or my breath is rapid. That would be like a 10. So with those 2 things in mind, think about where your number is on a scale of 1 to 10. Hold that number with you, and think about that portion of your body of where you're feeling that particular trapped energy. So for me, I am, I'll be quite frank, I'm probably about a 5 today. It is a Friday, but I just got out of some pretty icky traffic. So my anxiety is just a little bit higher than normal. Also, you know, we're in an environment right now where it's very easily to become regulated. So with that number for me, it's 5. What we're going to do is come to a comfortable seated position or another grounding position. So if you're standing, but that's comfortable to you, go ahead and do that. Coming to a comfortable seated position or standing, hold that number dear to you, and place that number wherever it is on your body that you also harbor tension. For me, I hold it right in my neck. So I just kind of place my hand there, not pull or anything, just hold it there. So you just have that energy and that and tension of where you're going to be sending your breath to. So the breath work is that we inhale through the nose, and it's a full breath into filling your lungs, holding at the top for a 3 count, and then slowly exhaling on a 5 count. So I'll do a first demonstration. Inhale, holding at the top for 3, 2, 1. On an exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's how the breath works. And so whatever your number is, because I can't see you, and it's a range for everybody's experience, hold that number to you and take those series of breath depending on where your number is. So that was 4 for me. So I'll continue on. If I were to take this as a practice, coming to a comfortable position, and I'll begin the breath work. Inhale through the nose. Hold at the very top for 3, 2, 1. Exhale out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale again. Hold at the top. 3, 2, 1. Exhale out slowly for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Continue your own breath at your own patterns. Inhale. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, inhale. Holding at the top Exhale out slowly. And wherever you are as a participant, continue to breathe at your own pace. So a couple of things are happening while we're doing this breath work. Because this is the health systems team and the health team, it's like preaching to the choir. We already know that when we're in a highly dysregulated state, cortisol raises, your blood pressure raises, your breath becomes more rapid. Just many things that can happen that just by simply breathing and with the slow count exhales out, that physically lowers down. It restricts the breath, so it causes your heart rate to drop. And so there's a physical thing that's happening, but it causes you naturally just to come back into regulation. The other piece of that is also you're bringing fresh oxygen into your body, which we obviously know that nourishes your red blood cells and just brings a little bit more peace. And so at the end of your breath work, the thing to ask yourself next is, where's my number now? So after breathing, I feel better. If I'm feeling right about a 3 would be my number, and you're more than welcome to continue another round of breath work until you can lower your number to a manageable level. So all of us operate at different levels. I know that when I'm around my 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like I cannot process any information. And so, but I generally operate in some level of anxiety just in general, and that's probably because I'm a parent and my children are in the home with me right now. So I'm operating at a 3 usually. So if I can lower my cortisol and lower my my number down to a manageable level, then I can continue my day. So that's a really tangible tip to I invite you to also do for yourself, but also when approaching families are also in a very dysregulated state, it's a good way to kind of get a temper check for where they're operating from, so then we can adjust our ways of engagement. Generally, we know, and I've mentioned before, when we're highly dysregulated, your brain can only absorb so much information, and they're usually very small increments. So if somebody's highly regulated and very heightened, we know we're not going to be saying a lot of things at once. We're going to take a moment to help them come back into regulation, and that relational resiliency is really powerful during this time. So there's going to be several attachments as part of my piece today that will be shared, and please, I highly welcome to share this out to the wider community. This is something that I created, and they're meant to be printed out or shared, emailed, whatever works well for folks. But this is something that if anybody is like myself, I can't go grocery shopping without a checklist because I'll just end up buying junk food. So checklists work for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's something that's helps me stay in regulation. And so some of the main pillars to kind of fall back on during this time, because we're in a environmental stressor, and we know that compound with other previous traumas such as ACEs or community traumas, for many of our children and families that we serve, but also ourselves, we are much easier to be dysregulated. And something that I keep hearing as a very common term is change fatigue too. And so in a time of unpredictability and uncertainty, it's really hard not to become dysregulated because there's so many unknowns. So some of the things to be mindful of is how are we taking moments to incorporate some sort of physical activity throughout our day? How are we connecting with another human being for that emotional resiliency? How are we creating schedules that are tangible and achievable, that we can hold ourselves accountable to, because that brings us some level of structure for the day? And then what things are we letting go of because it's out of our control? And if nothing else, did we drink enough water for the day? That's another one that's a really tangible tip of checking in. There's wonderful apps that are a lot of times available for free, particularly during this time, that help you track your water intake, because that's another thing. That's when we are, again, preaching to the choir, when we are dehydrated, we are not going to be operating at our best. So here's this isolation well-being checklist that I've created, and please feel free to share or use for yourself. And this is just a great way. By no means are you failing because you didn't hit every single one of them. It's just add those things to remind yourself to just keep yourself some sort of a schedule in place. And so I kind of layered into different categories, the first one being daily maintenance. So this is by no means the end all be all. This is just some tangible tips, and writing in your own is great. Did I shower? Do I need to shower today? Did I brush my teeth is another great one. Sometimes it's 3 p.m. and I can't remember if I brushed my teeth yet. And I realize I'm like, probably should do that. The other one is to be mindfully present. This I think is a really great, another tangible tip and resources to do for yourself, but also to do with children. If your coworkers and colleagues happen to be little humans right now, like myself, this is something that I'm taking the time to do with my children because it helps us both stay regulated, and that's being mindfully present. So we'll listen to music and dance together, or we'll just go into the backyard and just stare at, because I haven't the lawn hasn't been mowed for a really long time. It's overgrown with dandelions. So I'll just stare at a dandelion with my children, and I prompt them questions like, how many petals do you see? What are the colors? What are there little bugs can you find? And just hyper focusing on something that's very naturally occurring in nature, but also is something that's you can see it. You can see all the different fine details of it. It also has another tangible way of lowering the cortisol. Social connections. This is something that by nature of where we're living in right now, the whole concept of social distancing is really a disservice because it's, like many of you know, it's a medical term, but it's the physical act of being distant, but it doesn't mean emotional distance. And so thinking about ways of where you can check in with folks, particularly clients, family members, anyone who is physically isolated alone, and this is a really challenging time. So checking in any way that's available to you that works within your network. Is it sending a meme? Is it setting up a Zoom account? Is it writing a letter and mailing it? Those are all some great availabilities. And the second portion, Kelly, if you could scroll down just a tiny bit because I forgot what I typed. Oh, the last one, the rest. And so these are just other, I guess these are just suggestions. What was one thing that you did to get your heart rate up, and then one thing that you'll be glad you did later? Those two for me fall in the same one. Exercising is a little bit of a challenge right now. So anytime I get my heart rate up, I check those both at the same time and said, like, yeah, I was glad I did that, but also I got my heart rate up. I always try to find something to get a good laugh in there. And then this one is the last one, and this is just can be actually incorporated for a couple of different things, is how did I give back to my community? So did I support a local business, or did I, if I had the means to be able to do so, did I donate to a organization? There's tons of different, particularly community groups that have formed around this time that have almost like offer-ups, but also needs. And so there's direct ways that you can engage with somebody else who is, like I said, I always like to use this analogy where right now we're all weathering the same storm, but everybody's ship looks different. And some people are sitting on yachts and some people are sitting on pieces of driftwood, if not at all. So another really great one I'd like to put a little bit of a plug in for is we sit in Washington, and so there are 29 federally recognized tribes, but there's also tribes who are not federally recognized, but it's still thriving communities. Right now, the reality is food scarcity is very challenging for many tribes and tribal nations. And so one thing that has been really great whenever I have the platform to say so, please look where your nearest local tribe is and check with their direct food banks to see if there's any way to donate directly to your nearest tribal community. So yeah, those are all of my tangible tips for you today. I actually have to queue out. I have another stacked appointment, but if anybody has any questions that have to do with trauma-informed care resources or healing-centered practices, or have any questions for me, please feel free to put that into the chat box, and that will be cataloged, and then Kelly will get those over to me, and I can email back or do some sort of response and get that out to folks. So thank you so much for letting me be part of your space and your time, and I'm sending everybody all the virtual hugs and healing.
Thanks so much, Jen. And I also posted in the chat box links to some other resources that you sent as well. So please check those out, everyone. And thank you so much, Jen, for joining us today. It's really great to have you.
Bye, Jen.
So, Jennifer, did you want to talk next about immunizations, or do we want to go to Rebecca with Head Start updates?
You know, I can give, let's do it kind of a hybrid of the two. I say that because because I like to mess up people's agendas, and in large part because I'm really hoping to hear from some of you guys. So if I start the conversation and then we move to Rebecca, then hopefully if you guys have any questions or comments, you'll have time to put them into the questions box, right? That's what we're using.
Yep.
Yep. And then we can talk about any of the things that you guys are interested in that point, because I know there's enough people on this line who I've talked with about various things that somebody's going to have a question that we're going to need to talk about. But the main questions that have been coming my way around immunizations are in specific regard to the fact that the laws are changing as of August 30th. That has not changed despite the COVID world. So the question is, how do we deal with that going forward? So I guess part of what we were hoping to be able to get out of this is to say that no, that the laws are not going to, they're not pushing that, at least as of right now. So the requirement is that starting on August 30th, all children have to have medically verified immunizations. That's actually the biggest change for most early learning sites, which is not drastically different than what has always been expected at Head Start and ECAP, but it can look a little bit different in that it has to come from a medically verified source. So that's especially for those of you who also have licensed childcare. That has not been an expectation in licensed childcare in the past. So if anybody has any questions or comments, and I suppose the specific challenges around COVID, around the changes in the law, and the reason why people keep asking me if it's going to get pushed out, have to do with the fact that we're having lesser access to well child visits and immunizations at this time. And so how are we going to deal with that for our programs going forward? So I'll start with that little kind of tasty so you can kind of keep it in your head. And if there's a question or comment or an idea, some fabulous concept that you've already come up with for your program and you want to share it with other grantees or contractors, we would love to hear that. So with that, we'll come back to this. And Rebecca, you want to do your Head Start update first?
I'll just
actually real quick.
Oh,
just real quick, Jennifer.
Okay,
there is a question that popped in, so I think it makes sense to just address it right now.
To do it now.
Sure.
Okay, sure.
So Tamara's saying,
so
I heard you say August 30th, but I thought the change goes into effect August 1st. Can you clarify?
Yes, August 1st would be correct. So that is great. That is right. Will passports or foreign vaccination documents be accepted? Well, you mean like the passport books, Deanna? If they have the stamps from the doctor's office, then that counts. If they are just the books that like they gave me when my girls were born that I filled in, that does not count. And foreign vaccination documents are accepted in the same way that they've always been accepted, because we don't have any way of verifying them, although most international documentation do have stamps and signatures on them, at least the ones that I've seen over the years. And what about homeless? Wow, there's lots of questions already. So, okay, maybe we'll just do this and we'll come back to you, Rebecca.
No problem.
There may be more still. I'm still hoping that somebody's got some phenomenal, fantastic ideas. But okay, what about those considered homeless and what's the grace period? So homeless students fall under McKinney-Vento. There's different regulations around them. That's always been a little bit squishy. So as long as somebody's covered by McKinney-Vento, then they still have that little bit of leeway. The thing that's also different about the new law that I didn't say when I was talking about the medically verified is the grace period. So I'm putting air quotes, you may or may not be able to see me doing, we technically have often given people like a 30-day grace period to get their immunizations in, especially if they're like new to a program, something like that. That is not allowable anymore. Children must have immunizations on site to be able, or in hand, to be able to start a program. The only place that there is a grace period, this is something that we talked about at the last health coordinator meeting, and then I think I got back to everybody about, but it's entirely possible that I didn't, is that there is still the 30-day grace period to get into compliance if they're in a catch-up schedule. So because you can't necessarily go to the doctor the day that an immunization is due. So there is 30 days to get back into compliance once they're out of compliance. So let's see what's the next question from Deanna. Let's see if we have the Washington, the WAIIS, which is the Washington Immunizations online portal that we used to call Child Profile. If we have the print for an infant, do we have to print a new one each time they get their new series? Yes. They must have an up-to-date immunization schedule on site. So this is actually going to be, like I said, for Head Start and ECAP, and early Head Start, early ECAP has not typically been as big of a deal, but in childcare in particular, you often would have children who would come in with their immunizations at enrollment, and then they'd be graduating as a kindergartner with the same immunizations from their 3-month-old visit. This is also one of the changes, is that in the past, it was in the law, it only said that you had to have immunizations at enrollment, and now there's a requirement for annual updates of immunizations. So for babies, there's probably not, yes, to make sure that you have up-to-date immunizations on site, you would want to print them out each time or have the parents bring a copy of the immunization record each time. However, the actual legal requirement is only annually. So at least once a year, they have to be updated. Does it have to be signed each time? If it comes out of, it doesn't say anything about that in the law. So I can tell you what I would think, but I'm going to tell you right off the top of my head that it doesn't say that in the law. But they are considered medically verified if they come from the doctors. And if you have one signed, then you have one signed. But we can update that just to be on the safe side. I'm not positive about that. No grace period for kids, even with immunizations being stopped. So this is the question around COVID that we don't have an answer for. And you could send that into the checkbox, but there isn't an answer. There's nobody there who's going to be able to answer it either. At this point, we don't know. Rebecca and I have talked about this on several occasions around how Head Start's going to approach it, and I've chatted with the ECAP team as well around what that's going to look like for the fall. But as of right now, probably what that's going to look like is it's going to look like a lot of children on a lot of catch-up plans, which is a lot of work for health coordinators to follow up on. Because as long as they're in their process, it's through no fault of their own that they can't get immunization. But we will all have to do our best to try and help all of these families stay up to date. But we don't know that yet. I don't have an answer for you for that. Will you go over what you brought up? What is DCYF's plan to address the inability of families to get immunizations or well child checks? That's the same, I would say the same question. And I'm hoping that we can maybe talk about that a little bit. And we'll come back to that. So Michelle and Bambi, I don't have an answer for you at this point, and I hope that we can talk about it a little bit today. Robin asked, there'll no longer be a 30-day conditional status for incoming ECAP who are missing immunization. Yes, that is correct. You are correct. Sorry, I'm not being very clear. There is no hypothetical conditional status. Conditional actually has a specific meaning, which means that they're in an active catch-up schedule and are in process of becoming up to date. So not just 30 days to get immunizations. That was the term, the way that we had often in Head Start and ECAP used the word conditional was like, we're in the process of getting a copy of their immunizations. That is not allowed anymore. And My guess, then there's another question from Michelle about missing immunizations because of COVID. Is that going to be considered catch-up? My guess is that's what pediatricians are going to do, but that's going to be something that we're going to have to work with the pediatrician community to be able to come to an idea about what they want to do about that right now. The next question, so since there are no new immunizations between 3 and 4 years old, do we need to reprint a new CIS for those returning students who had a pass at 3 years of age? The law states that immunizations must be updated annually. So that would mean that, yes, if you had a child whose immunizations are more than a year old, you will need an updated a new CIS. And the last question we have on here is, can children attend in the summer if they are not completely up to date due to providers not scheduling well child visits or immunization visits? I cannot speak to enrollment questions for Head Start or ECAP, but from a legal standpoint around immunizations, what I could say is that if pediatricians are saying that they are not going to be having exams where they are giving immunizations, the child should not be held responsible for the fact that the pediatricians are not having exams. But you would need something in writing to be able to say that they're not having exams at this point in time, and that at X date they would be brought up to date on their immunization schedule. You guys, please correct me if I'm saying anything that sounds out of line with your guys' policies. I'm trying to stay on the health side as opposed to the enrollment the enrollment side of Head Start ECAP. So Tamara, I hope that answers your questions. And there's no more in this box as of right now. So there's a couple things that we will want to come back to, but okay, good. She says, yes, that answers her question. Good. That the way it's listed right now, Bambi, in there is as until August 1st, they don't need to be, but as of August 1st, they will be required to have an updated CIS annually. Because right now it's only at enrollment, which would be returning to the same school. Licensed childcare, early learning, they fall into the same bucket as far as how the law is written. Childcare is a little different than K-12 in this regard. Okay. So we'll come back. If you have more questions, please throw them in there. But since we were running through them, we wanted to do that. So we will definitely come back if there's anything else. Oh, I've got one more here. Yeah, Cheryl from Puget Sound ESD said that we have reached out to several providers in their area, and they're continuing to provide immunizations, prioritizing children under 2, but available for as much as possible. I have heard that as well. And the other thing I've heard is that unfortunately a lot of parents are really hesitant to also take their kids in. So even if the pediatricians are offering, I have a hard time blaming a parent for not wanting to take their well child into a doctor's office where people may be sick at this point in time. So yes, you are most definitely right, Cheryl. I have heard that across the state actually. But I think there's also some other things we have to take into account too at this point in time, right now, today as well. So thank you.
Yeah. And right. Jennifer, if I can hop on to that. So,
please, please.
The National Center of Early Child Health and Wellness is the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they are concerned that children aren't getting immunizations. We're starting to see, decline again with our MMR and pertussis, which are very scary ones that we definitely need to have everybody immunized for. So the AAP has produced guidance for their healthcare providers on prioritizing newborns and infants, just like Cheryl mentioned, children under 2. So and definitely immunizations for all the ages. However, so even though that's done at a national level, how that ends up happening in individual practices, really is individual depending on how they're able to set up their practice to minimize any sort of exposure or contact. I've heard of some places across the country that are doing, almost sounds like, kind of like drive-through immunizations. I've heard of ones where they're coming in for part of the visit. They're really limiting everybody's gowned up, masked up. they're having a very brief visit to check on the development of the child, and then they'll actually leave the room and finish the rest of the visit either by phone within that room or telehealth once they go home. So it really is individual, but also what Jennifer was saying is that, you know, parents are very concerned about going in there. So I know for me personally, if it was me, I really like the drive-through idea. If you could do a telehealth thing and then just go and get the shot, that would be awesome. If I was a newborn, I'd probably want to make sure the doctor somehow saw my baby. But I think that as that guidance was released, you know, my days are like yours. My days are all kind of morphing into one long day. I think it was last week. As that becomes more shared more commonly, maybe that's something that we can help our families with too, is understanding what the local medical community is doing, what that would look like, what safeguards are in place to keep you and your baby safe. Because we really don't want to compound this with also having to worry about a pertussis outbreak or measles again or any of that. So we'll share more as more comes out.
Yeah, so we've had 2 other comments come in. One was a question about certificate of exemptions that are valid and signed by both the doctor and the parent. Will they continue to be valid, or will they also need to be annual? If they're considered a permanent exemption, then they don't need to be renewed annually. But if they're temporary exemptions for some reason, those do need to be done annually the same way because they're considered temporary. But you don't see. Yeah, you're going to know when you're from your family what type of immunizations you have. You know the families that you're dealing with when you're talking about your exemptions typically. Remembering that the exemption is not valid for measles, mumps, and rubella as of last July. And then Deanna wanted to put in down in the Vancouver area, they have clinics that have freshly cleaned clinics with AM well child checks and immunization appointments, and every other room is used, then cleaned prior to the next family, and the sick call type exams are in the afternoon only. So that's one of the things that some of their pediatric clinics are doing. Okay. All right, so if you guys have more stuff, we'll go to Rebecca for now, and then if you have more things, please type them in. We'll come back to it if there's more to talk about.
Actually, before we get to the health part, Kathy, did you have other Head Start updates?
Oh yeah, great.
I wasn't sure if that update was me or if that was Kathy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I'm learning. This is great. And just thinking about all the connections and how the collab office and working with NDCYF with Jennifer and with the regional office can help, you know, understand what some of the issues are and what we might be able to do. So thank you though, Rebecca. So yeah, this is you. Perfect.
Okay, go ahead. So we have a couple of things, resources to provide, and Kelly has those attached over there. So I'm not sure how that works. They can download them right from there, I'm assuming. So let me talk about those resources as you take a look at them. One of them was the handout that was given after last Friday's webinar put on by the National Center of Early Childhood Health and Wellness. Hopefully you caught it, but if you didn't, there were like close to 20,000 people that signed up. And so not that many people were able to be on, but they do have the recording available. It's really worthwhile to go to watch. Just remember though that the doctor starts it out by saying that the information she's giving was accurate as of that moment and has probably changed by the time you're viewing the recording. So they did pull together, thank you, Kelly. Kelly's scrolling down the list of some of the resources for the health information. I know you guys all know this, the #1 spot for any health information around COVID is CDC. That's really the spot to go to. We've made a couple of, let's see, I will go through the handouts before I get to the rest, maybe. Kelly, do you want to pull up the TNTA one? It says yeah, that one. With the focus on the healing and resilience, we did pull together a few resources, but we had to kind of stop ourselves because we're hearing that people are getting overloaded with resources, and I'm feeling that way too. So hone in to the ones that make the most sense for you. And again, for health, always the CDC and your local health district are the best ones for that. But here's a few of the other that are nationally recognized and kind of like, you know, Head Start approved ones to check out. And then the third handout, I'm keeping Kelly awake here. The third handout is the TNTA event things that we've changed, the event portals and the things that we have offered. You'll see that there's live registration links that you can click on. So now go back to the slide and we'll talk a little bit about that. But there's a series of health meetings, there's meetings for your program directors, and then there's some things for the education and family services. So everybody all included. So the health one that you saw listed on there is something new, is the Health Happiness Hour. And that is every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And feel free to make yourself a smoothie. I can virtually give you one, but that's as close as I can get to you. So enjoy that. And that really is just a chance for health managers to have a chance to talk about what's going on. Because as you guys all know, for many of you, there's one of you in your program, or maybe you're lucky enough to have a couple, but it's really a nice opportunity to talk with other health managers. And it's not just Washington, it's Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Idaho. And that's been interesting too, to see the differences state to state as far as how the first shutdown happened and now how things are rolling out. When we talked on Wednesday, there was a lot of talk about what it would even look like to reopen. And this came right on the heels of having that webinar on Friday that went through the different ways that you could check children's temperature before they entered, and the CDC is is recommending 3 different ways that you could do it. And then as managers started thinking about what that would entail, you have to think about the details of, okay, how do we get that many thermometers? How do we get that much PPE? Folks were trying to buy thermometers right then. Some places were sold out. So lots of details that it can be helpful to talk through with each other. And the kind of the goals of what we're doing is just a chance to talk, share ideas, and then we always talk a little bit about wellness like you guys just did today. eClick, if you've been on there lately, you've noticed that they've got a banner now right at the top. So whatever page you're on, you can easily get to the areas on COVID. So all the mental health webinars are being stored in a spot called Head Start Heals. The programmatic things like, you know, the things around payment and all the different funding opportunities, all that's kind of grouped together, as well as the health and safety information. And you don't have to, I know that there's folks from ECAP only on here. I don't know if there's childcare on here or not. I can't see the list of participants, but anybody can join on eClick. It is hosted by the Office of Head Start, but it is really intended to be the community of all of us involved in early learning, early childhood settings. The same with my peers. So I'll stop babbling for a while there and see if people have questions, or if you're not familiar with any of those resources. And I really hope you do join in the happiness hours. I think it's a great opportunity just for people to be able to connect.
So Rebecca, someone is asking, how can I sign up for the happiness hour?
So on that handout, the one that had the one that says the PD calendar, yep, right there. You click the register and it will take you, I like how you're circling it. You click on there and that will sign up for all of them.
And these handouts, so all of you know, they're available in the handouts tab on the webinar feature. So you should be able to access those and download those.
As far as finding that, the webinar from Friday, I believe they have, I should have looked at it just before we got on, but I believe if you go to eClick, it should have a link on there. If it's not on there today, it'll be on there by Monday. I know they were going to try to get it up really soon. It's definitely worth watching if you in case you missed it.
There was another question about being able to access the resource list on the internet, because there's several people having trouble accessing them through the handouts. So is there somewhere that the resource list, and then also just the handouts in general, if there was another way to access this information?
So they're not able to print them off of here or pull them out off of here? Okay.
Right.
So, Kelly, what do you suggest? Should we send out as an email afterwards, or?
We can certainly, I don't have all the contact information for participants. So if you're interested and unable to access the handout, if you want to email the ECAP inbox, I'd be happy to send them out, unless someone else knows an easier way.
All this technology stuff is all great, and sometimes.
Rebecca,
I try to go find it.
Are these documents available on the eClick website?
The top one might be the one the one that was from the webinar. That one might be on there. The other two are specific to Region 10, and they're on the Region 10 TNTA portal. So, Kathy, I'm trying to think of what's the best way to direct people towards that. I should have just put the link right in there, huh?
Can you type the link into the chat?
My next question.
Yeah. Can we type the link into the chat?
I will go find that. Let's see.
My other thought, Kelly, is if we created a slide with all of the links on one slide, could folks access it through the PDF that would be posted?
Yes, we can do that.
We'll just add an additional slide for those pieces.
Solutions.
Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to get to the grantee portal. All right. It's kind of a messy one.
Let's see.
I think Ida shared a link. Thank you, Ida. I just shared that in the chat.
Perfect. That's what I was just going to do. Good way to go.
Which one did Ida do?
The Smart Sheet publish. I don't know.
Oh, that's the one I just sent in. I'm hoping. I think there's a better one. Sorry, you guys. Okay.
Okay. So I was going to say, while we're looking for links, if there are other, this particular, if the health group typically has some topics at top of mind that they wanted to have addressed. So if there are topics that were on the top of your mind that you, questions, there we are, see, that you wanted to have one of us, all of us weigh in on, or be able to have, facilitate some sort of a discussion between other health staff, we are excited and ready to do that with you guys. So I see there's some questions. Hopefully they're...
here we go. Hopefully.
Oh, just people talking about the handout still. So.
I know, I'm still working on it here. Let's see. This is...
So what is it that we can potentially talk about with you, weigh in on with you, hear about your fantastic ideas and thoughts for how you're dealing with health and wellness in your program right now?
Still trying to get this
we could have people raise their hands if they're interested in talking, having their voice heard. we can do that.
So Jennifer, it looks like Tamara's asking, does anyone know if the groups of 10 that the president is allowing to expire will still be required, for example, for emergency childcare and or if childcare reopens?
Do we know that? I don't think we know anything. Do we think that's probably the case? As of 1:52 on May 1st, distinct possibility, but we don't know anything. In fact, we all just got notices right before we got on here that Governor Inslee is giving a talk at 2:30 today. So I'm assuming that we are going to hear some more updated information from our governor as soon as this session's over.
So this is Kathy. This is Kathy. Maybe I can jump in there. I mean, I think that we'll know more what's going on here. You know, obviously as we learn more about COVID-19 and what the governor is doing, but from ECAP leadership and the directors and Head Start, we're starting to have some conversations about thinking ahead to the fall or later summer, and if we are still in a requirement of having group sizes of no larger than 10, how would we continue to provide services to families? What would be the creative and different ways that might happen? And and so we're beginning to do that planning now. So directors are providing input into that. So if this, groups have some thoughts about that, we'd love to hear them and thinking about, what are some different ways that we can continue to serve children, but recognize if we need to keep, group sizes to 10, how that will, how that could look. I think people are being really creative and thinking about what they could do and what that could look like. So, and it may be a combination of, continued group services, as well as modified services, or so I think there's lots of ideas being discussed.
Yeah, I would say the same thing's true.
Thoughts about that or ideas about that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing is true in the child care discussions that I've been part of. There's definitely a lot of that. So several people who've written into the box, let's see. Ida said that their program is doing a Dare to Lead book club. That's a great program. We love us some Brené Brown. Let's see, Christy wants to know if there's any guidance yet around COVID precautions for programs who are thinking of having a summer program. From specific to Head Start and ECAP, is there any guidance that you guys have put out yet around that?
Not yet. It's
okay.
As you can imagine, just like Kathy was saying, we've had a lot of conversation very, recently, because if you take the guidelines right now that are in existence for the child care for programs that are doing care for emergency, you run into the things like we were just talking about, the screening, the only 10 children, the 6 feet apart with the cots, the smocks for the infant care, all that kind of stuff. And so, and it is changing almost daily. So we're trying to start to put that together, but we're still a little ways out time-wise as far as how things are going to evolve, but it is in the works. And also, if I can go back to the trying to get the PD portal to you guys, I've sent this about 5 times, not realizing it was just going to Kelly next, Laura. I don't seem to have the option here to send to everybody. So if you could maybe take just one of those and send it out to folks, that one should work. There's a little bit shorter version there and maybe I heard Ida's on. Ida, check it, click on it and see if it works once you get it.
Perfect.
And this is Kathy, if I can just tag on to what Rebecca was saying about the Head Start summer learning opportunity for programs that are applying for that summer learning opportunity. It's what I've been hearing from the Office of Head Start is to really think about, what would be ideal and plan for that. We would be able to have groups and those things and put in for what they think would work the best. And then as we learn more, then we can make modifications in that as it goes along. So just encouraging programs to think about what, kind of assuming that they could have groups and then needing to modify as we learn more.
Right, and that comes into the budgeting too, because if you're going to need to, change your entrance and your exits, and you're needing to put up some plexiglass or, whatever, or buy a bunch of thermometers, whatever it is, to think that all the way through, kind of with what you know at the moment, and build that into your budget.
And I would encourage also to think about they are providing, if you need more mental health support, or, recognizing that children are going to come back and maybe need some more, extra classrooms, extra staff or extra mental health support. So allowing that to be factored in as well. Yeah, which is awesome. That the Office of Head Start's doing that.
That is incredible. Thank you, Kathy and Rebecca. Let's see, Michelle said the governor is supposed to be giving us a phased-in approach to returning to the new normal, which we've been calling the next normal. Deanna says they're working in their program and planning to reopen 2 full-day, full-year childcare sites, but spread them into 3 locations instead of 2, so they can lower their group sizes. Ida said we want to try a summer program after polling staff, but they won't have enough to work. That's unfortunate. And then Cheryl says, is anyone working with currently open childcare centers? And if so, are you implementing cloth face coverings, at least for the adults? I have been, and I'd be interested to hear what other people are doing, because mine is just relatively local, obviously. Most of the ones that I have been working with are not wearing cloth face coverings while they're at work, but then when they're not at work, they are. So I would be interested if there's anybody else who has experience with that perhaps in their programs that they're working with. Oh, we have somebody with a raised hand too. Let's see who's quick to see whose hands are raised.
Brenda.
Whose hand is raised.
And say it's Brenda has her hand raised, and so I'm not seeing anybody respond real quick. So, oh wait, her hand went away.
Her hand went away. You don't want to talk anymore.
Maybe it was an accident.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Brenda, if you want to talk, please let us know. We'll be happy to unmute you. Let's see. Tamara says they're planning to have a summer program for groups of 10 half-day programs. Thankful they'll have the staff to operate. Deanna said, yes, we bought from a nutrition vendor these smock apron things with 2 per classroom staff so that they have 1 to wear and 1 to wash. They're white and can be bleached as needed. Says that there's more, but I don't see anything else. How about food? Are any of you guys having issues? A lot of health coordinators also oversee food services or nutrition. One of the other areas that I've been working on in the state level is food security, and trying to make sure that programs are getting access to the food supplies that they need to be able to keep their staff and children fed during the day, because that is one of our responsibilities as well. We know we were having some problems with that at the beginning, and then now what we're coming up against is that as we're serving more and more prepackaged food items. 3 months ago, when all of that food was being created and packaged, it was not an issue at that point. So the amount that was being produced was plenty for what was needed. But now we're in this area where we're creating school lunches that are going out for, more children than normally eat school lunches, and then childcare sites and early learning settings. And so we're coming up against some shortages of prepackaged foods. But I would be interested to see if any of you are having problems. I know we do have Child Care Aware of Washington was able to put together an agreement with Costco, which is, luckily here is a Washington company, so that child care providers or early learning settings can be exempted from the limits on food that they've been, that have been put in place, like for milk, where it was set you couldn't buy more than 2 gallons of milk, which is anybody who's ever served milk in an early learning setting knows that 2 gallons of milk is not going to go very far. So that's really exciting that they're able to do those types of things. But I'm not seeing anybody typing anything, so maybe you guys are not aware of or not having problems in this regard. We think some of these problems are coming in more in some of the family home child cares where they're not necessarily associated with some of the bigger systems. Like many of our Head Start and ECAP programs tend to be associated with larger systems. Yeah, what you got, Exeler?
It looks like Deanna has her hand raised. So
Yay,
I'm going to unmute you.
Let's hear from Deanna.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we our nutrition situation was kind of awkward at first, and then we were able to apply for the summer food program, which is different from our normal, so that we could offer to siblings as well. And what we ended up doing is at our central kitchen on Mondays, we have a drive-through situation at 5 different locations for families can come pick up a box per child for the week, offering 5 breakfasts, 5 snacks, and 5 lunches for each child in 1 box for the week. And so what that looks like is a kid will get a box that has a box of cereal, a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a pound of cheese, a pound of lunch meat, 5 fresh fruits, some other stuff, cans of soup, things like that. Anyhow, so if they have 1 kid, they get that. If they have 5 kids, they get 5 of those boxes. But we also partner with our Share Homeless program, and they give all the schools Friday bags all school year, so that kids have food sustainability on the weekend. So Share is coming with their moving truck at the same time and offering that 10 pounds of non-perishable food to carry them through the weekend. Luckily, we have a Safeway in the same parking lot, because what's happening is we're doing it for about 1,200 kids with the siblings and all of that. So we're buying 1,200 gallons of milk on Sunday and Monday morning from Safeway, and they're bringing it over by the pallet. So
Wow,
it's really great. And then we only have the 1 bus for 1 remote rural area, and they're taking that and going around to some sites, to houses where families don't have a car, and some advocates are doing driveway drop-offs. So quite a bit of food pumping out. It is quite the orchestration to have reopened that kitchen distantly and what that looks like. We're thankful that some of the businesses that are closed on either side of that central kitchen have let us commandeer space so that we can work apart, and the staff are wearing masks and such. So I just don't know how long we could keep that up. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Deanna. It's amazing how lucky the families are in your area to have you guys looking out for them. That's great. Ida wants to make sure that you get some self-care, Deanna. All right. Anyone else who, another hand is raised.
All right, Cheryl, I'm going to unmute you now.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to follow up to Deanna. I'm curious to know what made their agency decide to go that route of providing that food compared to accessing school district summer feeding program, because that's what we've been able to do in our agency, and across our whole region. But I'm just curious to know, should we be doing something different, or kind of how the decision making happened?
Deanna, I'm going to unmute you so you can respond to Cheryl, okay?
What happened was we are really spread out, and we're within 11 different school districts. Mm-hmm. And getting that messaging out to multiple language to all the different families in all the different districts as to where they can go in every single district. And the districts are only passing it out for that day. So the family would then have to go each day, and they also make the child be present. So they have to get every kid that's going to get a little sack of food has to go each day. And it was, you know, a lot of our families, that's just not working out at all. And some of them aren't coming to our food program. They're just going, you know, we have one family that lives across the street from the school that's distributing, so they like the walk over, you know, that works for them. We're also referring them to the church food pantries that are having drive-throughs, and, you know, the food bank that's having specific pickups. But for as complex, some of our smaller school districts aren't doing the food program. They're referring people to the other programs in the county. So it was just really hit and miss what the school districts were doing. And then they were changing and saying that the families need to go online each day and see where the drop-off points are, because they were rotating schools, which then meant, you know, 1 week they could go to certain schools and 1 week they would have to go to other schools in the district. It would just, that resource wasn't working very well. So I think that other problem was we were only able to give food out to the enrolled child. And so getting that summer food program with USDA allowed us to do every child in the family. And we have their information on our Child Plus from enrollment. So we know how many kids the family has. They can't include their neighbor kids, you know. So we know the numbers for those families and their location ID numbers. And so it just worked out better for us to do it that way.
That's helpful. Thanks, Deanna.
Yeah, thanks. Tamara added that her school district, and Tamara, I don't remember where you're from. I know we've talked a bunch over the years, but I don't remember where you're from. So if you put that in, that would be great. But thank you. So her school district in Pullman has been amazing. The schools are able to feed children 0 to 17, including pickup options at several different locations and bus drop-offs at various school bus stops. They are supplementing for families in need and continue to provide what they call bike-to-go bags that they receive from another nonprofit. So that's awesome. Okay. So are there, I'm not trying to cut off our nutrition discussion. I'm just trying to think of other discussion, you know, if there's any other topics that are on the top of your head that you would like this group of esteemed colleagues to talk about. We are here, we have a few more minutes. We certainly don't have to take the full 90 minutes, but I know as health people like to talk typically, so we provided ourselves enough time to be able to do that, but we can totally end early if we are done with topics for today. I'll give it another minute or two to see if anybody thinks of anything that they want to talk about. Anything Kelly or Laura, Kathy or Rebecca that that you want to talk about. You're welcome, Christy. I'm glad to see your name on there. Anything else that anybody else wants to talk about that we're not? Oh, Deanna says she's doing her first virtual postpartum newborn home visit today at 2:30. They're coming up with lots of ideas and preparations to move forward with that. Has anyone else done one? Cheryl says, quick question about outdoor play structures. New DOH guidance says do not use play structures such as climbers or slides. That has to, and Ida said she wants to end early so we can take a break before the governor starts talking. So we'll try and do that. I know, Cheryl, that I helped write the new DOH guidance. So I can tell you that the discussion behind not using the climbers and slides has to do with sanitation and cleaning them, and that there is not a realistic or good way to clean outdoor play equipment in a way that would allow children to be able to remain safe unless you're only having like one person utilizing the equipment at a time, or one group of playing. You know, if you had a separate play structure for each classroom, for example, as we're talking about maintaining groups of 10 without, you know, combining classes at the beginning of it and end of class days or that sort of thing, that might be a different story, but because most playground structures are utilized by multiple classes, there's not really a good way to clean them. That's where that guidance came from. If you have a better situation in your particular setup, then you probably could, can make an argument for utilizing it, but that's where that guidance came from the environmental health folks at DOH. Let's see, Sean says the national tool to show where school districts are providing meals does not appear to list any programs in Seattle. Does anybody know anything about that? Margarita says, thank you. You're welcome. And Tamara says, we are using our on-site play structure, but we only have 4 to 5 children per day for emergency child care and sanitizing it afterwards. Yeah, and that's the kind of situation where it's, if you're in your particular situation, it's the children who are all sharing a space already, then there's not a concern necessarily with it. But if you're, having one class in the morning and one class in the afternoon, there's not really a good way to sanitize it in between classrooms, is the thinking. Somebody has their hand raised, yeah.
Cheryl has her hand raised, so I'm going to unmute you right now. There you go.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had put it back down, but I was just going to say, yeah, that's what we were trying to kind of interpret in the guidance. It would be nice if it kind of had some of that kind of where the decision came from, because we do have a site that is has multiple classrooms of less than 10 children, obviously, more like 5 or 6 children at a time, but they are disinfecting the equipment in between. That's usually during nap time or whatever is happening, but we've actually even witnessed them running out there in between classes, so that there is that opportunity. So I just wanted to find out if that seems like it's an okay practice to whoever wrote the guidance.
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth discussion about that, and it really came down to like the realism of staff actually doing that in between each group of children, because the original guidance said as long as it was sanitized in between each group of children, it was okay. But then it came back after lots of input about how most teachers and classroom staff just don't have the time to do that. So I suppose if that's your process and they're already doing that, then it would meet the requirements that were originally set out in the guidance.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Sure. And if you actually have any specific environmental health questions about this type of stuff, the DOH person, I'm sure she's going to let me giving out her information, but she's out there anyway. But is Nancy Bernard at DOH is the environmental health specialist that's been kind of in charge of a lot of this guidance and the interpretation. So if you have any like specific questions, she would be the person to go to about that. Any comments on providing transportation and physical distancing? There is guidance from the CDC about transportation. It is also in the DOH guidance for childcare, which is updated on the DOH website and linked from the DCYF website. I think it's like towards excuse me while I yell at my children for a second. No, sit down. That is not okay. Sorry. Realism here. I believe it's on the 3rd page. There is the whole section on transportation and what the expectations for social distancing or physical distancing on transportation are. So I don't want to misstate that. It is already written out. It comes from CDC through DOH. Go there for the information on transportation.
And Jennifer, don't we have Nancy coming to the meeting on the 15th? So
we do, yeah. So if you, yes, Nancy will come to, in person virtually, to talk with us at the Head Start and ECAP Health Coordinator Consortium group, which is in the afternoon on the 15th, after the Seashell meeting. So if you are not signed up for that yet, we hope that you will sign up. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the afternoon, or all day if you have childcare and you're interested in other early learning topics. That's what we're there for. Updated 312. No, it was just updated last week. The original guidance from DOH came out on the 17th of March, and then it was updated like the 23rd-ish of April. So the one that's linked on the website is not the same one that you looked at before, but the most up-to-date is the one that is on the DOH website now. So it should have a late April update on it, date on it. And Ramona asked about building natural immunity. I am not a doctor, so I am not going to attempt to even say that beyond some of the things that like Jen was talking about earlier, which is just in keeping yourself healthy and well, and then the children and people in your world as far as physical activity and sleep and all of the things that we already know from a prevention standpoint. I would never profess to say that I would be able to tell you how to build natural immunity to a novel virus. I wish I had that power. If I did, we would all be in a different place, I think. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Ramona, I don't have a better answer for you. Anything else? Any last parting thoughts? This is an amazing group. I love working with all of you. If you think of anything later, please feel free to send any one of us an email. I'm sure I'm going to once again put that out there for all of you guys. I'm sure none of you would mind getting an email from one of the people in this group, and most of you know Rebecca and I. So please feel free to send any questions our way. If there's something health specific that you're interested in, I always try and forward it back to the ECAP team if it's something that's ECAP specific, or to Rebecca if it's Head Start specific when people send things my way. But we are here for you, and thank you for everything you're doing. And thank you. Oh, the sound of my children. Thank you. I appreciate that you didn't mind it so much. I'm sorry about my yelling in the middle of it. They were jumping on the couch. That's not allowed. So anyway, have a great Friday afternoon. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all in person, not virtually, someday really, really soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
All as well.